much, and good morning, everyone.
Good
I am
morning and
Council.
welcome to today's New York City Council hearing for the Committee on Public Safety. Please silence all cell phone and electronic devices. Chair, we're ready to begin.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I apologize, I'm not on screen, but I'm under the weather. I am Councilmember Camila Hanks, and I'm the Chair on the Committee of Public Safety. And I am joined by council members, I'm joined by council members Holden, Ariola, De La Rosa, Caban, Stevens, Brannan, Botcher, and Joseph. Today, this committee will vote on a package of bills that aim to increase public transparency regarding NYPD operations. And I believe addressing these issues are essential to increasing public safety, confidence, and the trust in NYPD and law enforcement. My top priority is ensuring that all citizens feel safe and recognizing the fundamental role that NYPD plays in achieving this objective. While the call for transparency is undeniable, it is equally crucial to reckon with the potential consequences of police operations and community relationships. But I assert that a collaborative and thoughtful approach is indispensable to strike that balance that ensures transparency while preserving the efficiency of law enforcement and fostering positive community relations. The well-being and safety of our citizens demand a comprehensive solution that navigates the complexities of transparency and effective policing. And I believe that these bills seek to do that. The bills being voted on today are as follows. Proposed introduction number 538-A, sponsored by Councilmember Hudson, in relation to requiring the NYPD to report on instances in which an individual denied an officer consent to a search. Proposed introduction number 585-A, sponsored by the public advocate Jumaane Williams, in relation to providing NYPD body-worn camera footage to the Department of Investigation. Proposed introduction number 586-A, sponsored by the public advocate Jumaane Williams, in relation to requiring the NYPD to report on police-civilian investigative encounters. Proposed introduction number 638-A, sponsored by Councilmember Stevens, in relation to reporting on the use of large donations received by the NYPD. Proposed introduction number 781-A, sponsored by the public advocate Jumaane Williams, in relation to requiring the police department to report on the justification for a stop in a vehicle encounter reporting. Proposed introduction number 944-A, sponsored by myself, Councilmember Hanks, in relation to the evaluation of civil actions alleging improper conduct by the NYPD. Proposed introduction 948-A, sponsored by Councilmember Lewis, in relation to requiring NYPD to report on information and data regarding department operations. Proposed introduction number 1011-A, sponsored by Councilmember Brooks Powers, in relation to providing information on the reduced fare programs to persons issued a summons for fare evasion. And finally, resolution number 473, sponsored by Councilmember Caban, calling for the New York State Legislature to pass and the governor to sign S 1099/A 1963, which will protect youth during custodial police interrogation. I will now pass it along to the public advocate, Jumaane Williams, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As mentioned, my name is Jumaane Williams, a public advocate for the City of New York, and I'd like to thank Chair Hanks and the members of the Committee on Public Safety for holding this vote. I first just wanted to set some context of why I continue to do what it is I do, and I want to talk about Samia. Samia is in 2011, was 20 months years old, and I keep her picture from the Daily News on my wall ever since in my office. She was shot in the eye at 20 months, and she lost her eye. My daughter is about 20 months now, and that hits a lot different when you start having your own children. But I keep it there to remind me why to continue to do what I do. And when I think of her, I think of a 13-year-old that also lost his eye from a shooting in my former council district. I think of the grandmother I visited who was shot by a stray bullet and was paralyzed. I think about Terea Starnes. I think about Alex Rodriguez. I think about all Dominic Sylvester, the people who were shot and killed when I was growing up. And I think about the first protest my mother took me to of Patrick Dorismond, who was shot in police by the back. I think about Abner Louimna. I think about so many names that we've heard of. And that is because of the over-policing that was supposed to address the violence that I also try to think about. And it has not, because since the 90s and since 2011, the names have only grown of people who were killed in street violence and also killed by police violence. And I say that particularly to some of the loudest voices in opposition, not people who have general concerns, because I understand, but the loudest people who have the loudest opposition are the ones who are not dealing with these issues in their district. They are not dealing with the real street violence and the real over-policing. And so many of us who have been dealing with this in our communities know that our communities are sandwiched between real street violence and real over-policing that's not keeping them safe. And they deal with the impacts of that over and over again. So I have tried in whatever capacity to try to deal with the real street violence and the real over-policing. And so if the people who have the loudest voices, I'm not sure how many funerals you've gone to, but you talk to most of us that deal with this, whether it is street violence, I've gone to police funerals, and I've gone to funerals of people who've been killed by police, and the pain looks very much the same. So the only thing I'm asking is that you take us at our word, that we have to deal with this trauma on a daily basis. And simply adding more police doesn't solve the problems, because now we're arresting the children that we arrested, the children of the people we arrested 30 years ago when we said it would solve the problem. And if we go back about 12 years when we passed the Community Safety Act in this same House, all of the opposition I'm hearing now, I heard then, except it didn't come to pass. We went on a 10-year decline of crime of historic measures. We all agree now that there were abuses of stop, question, and frisk. The reason we know that now is because there was data. It's because we got the data and we looked at it. Part of the remedial process that everyone agrees was needed to address the biases in stop, question, and frisk and the abuses that happened there was to have an account of all stops. This was the recommendation to remedy the thing that we all agreed upon. The recommendation was that officers account for all of the stops that they're doing. And then in a randomized check with cameras and other information, the monitor has said that there is an underreporting of level 3 stops, commonly known as 250s, or the abuses of stop, question, and frisk. And part of that reason is because there is probably an over-account of those stops being level 1s and being level 2s. And all this Bill 586, the hype of the bill does, is say, let's not use anecdotes, let's not use 1 or 2 experiences. Let's all look at the same data the same way we did 12 years ago, so we can all come to agreement of what that data says. Without that data, we're all flying without the proper information. So we don't have a full picture of how many people are stopped and why they're stopped, even if it's lower level stops. By the way, those lower level stops are often indistinguishable to level 3 stops. That's why we're voting today on Intro 586, that will require the NYP to report on all levels of police stops and encounters. To be clear, we can do this a very simple way. I know there's a use of the word paperwork. Everything is electronic now. It's a simple drop-down menu with 4 or 5 questions that should take 20 to 30 seconds. One of those questions, by the way, We added on because the NYPD asked us to add that question on, even as they're saying it's going to take too long. These level 1 stops do not include, and if you read the bill, it's very clear, we made it a point to make it clear that it does not include casual conversations or normal interaction with communities, like saying hello, a tourist asking you for directions, going into a bodega and asking the bodega how everything's going, the bodega owner, or going to a group of young people asking them how the neighborhood is. Is there any problems we should know about? All we want is the demographic data. We don't need the pedigree, the name, or the address of the person who's there. So I'm just asking folks, so that we're not talking at each other, that we get a holistic picture of the data so we can talk to each other looking at the same thing and remembering every time, every single time, the response to transparency and accountability is the world is going to fall apart with crime. It has never happened. It only feels different because now is the next time, but it has never happened. And I hope that people will take time to think about that, particularly the loudest voices that are not dealing with these issues. This is not textbook. This is not on TV. This is very real for those of us who are dealing with it. And I want to thank the speaker for her leadership on this issue. It's a difficult issue, but we can all work together for better policing, which is what we want, and safer streets. And I want to thank my my co-sponsor, Tiffany Caban, for her leadership and co-sponsorship as well. That's on 586. According to the New York City Liberty News in 2022, 49% of drivers arrested following traffic stops were Black and 59% were Latinx. And my bill 781, which requires NYPD to include in-vehicle encounter reports, the justification used by officers to conduct a vehicle stop if an observed offense was cited as a justification for vehicle stop, and whether the offense was at the level of an infraction, violation, misdemeanor, or felony. In order to effectively address racial bias in policing, we need to know the full scope of the problem. Oversight bodies, including the Department of Investigation, have had difficulty receiving NYPD body-worn camera footage. This lack of compliance with requests for access to body-worn camera footage seriously impedes investigations by oversight agencies, including the CCRB and the Department of Investigations, OIG, NYPD. Bill Intro 0585 seeks to increase and expedite oversight agencies' access to body-worn camera footage. This bill will require the NYPD to share all body-worn camera footage requested by the OIG and NYPD within 5 days of the recording. I want to thank all of my staff that worked on this over the past few years. First, Deputy Nick Smith, Deputy Director Jeffrey Sevier, Deputy Public Advocate for Justice Safety, Solomon Acevedo, Deputy Public Advocate for Housing and Health Equity, Gwen Safran, Senior Policy and Legislative Associate, as well as the committees, Communities United for Police Reform, also the committee staff, Jeremy Whiteman, Josh Kingsley, Rob Calandra, and a special, huge, big shout out to two folks who, particularly over the last months, have really got this over the hump. And I'm just sincerely thankful for all the work and time and lost nights that they put in, and that's Veronica Avies, Chief Deputy Public Advocate for Policy, and Rosie Mendez, former council member, Director of Legislation and Policy. And I'm hoping everyone will take heed to what I just spoke about and so many people are feeling. And people like my mom, who a bullet went through her car just 2 summers ago, I'm thankful that she's not in it. This is personal. We want safer streets and better policing. Both of those things can happen at the same time. This bill helps achieve that. These bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Advocate. And with that, will the clerk please take the roll call vote? I vote aye.
Thank you. Chair Hanks, thank you. Brannan.
Aye. Aye.
Holden.
Permission to explain my vote.
You may go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Let me talk about Intro 586 for a couple of minutes, I guess I have. At an off-topic press conference by the mayor, Deputy Mayor Fabian Levy reported approximately 8.5 million 911 calls annually. Let's do that. Let's talk about that. The NYPD's testimony on Intro 586 in March, in which I stayed and listened to the testimony by the police revealed that 3.2 million level 1 police encounters yearly. So let's talk about that. Anybody ever listen to the scanner? I do. I listen to my police scanner many times while I'm at my desk, just to get a feeling of what's going on in the community. Each unit, each police car, each unit is holding 5 911 calls. That means they're delaying getting to them because there's so many calls coming through. That's with a full role of police officers in the precinct. Now we're down to about half in many regards in many precincts, half the police officers. So you're asking these units to report on a pull-down menu, according to the public advocate, which doesn't exist yet, by the way. And here's the level 3 form. It's got about 50 questions, all right? That's level 3. So you're asking them, the police officers, to add level 1 and level 2 stops. And again, the paperwork alone will hinder police efficiency, keeping officers behind their desk instead of on patrol. So what the public advocate wants to do is just the opposite. He wants to keep people safe. This is going to have the opposite effect of just more paperwork. And that's again, people who don't understand policing, who don't understand the everyday life of a police officer. They should go on a ride-along. I went on 2 ride-alongs, but go on a ride-along and see what the officers face before you come up with bills that will be impossible to really take forward in any meaningful way. This is not going to be good for public safety. So again, the police staffing shortage, coupled with crime rates on so many things. The police response is certainly going up. The time that it takes to even answer a call is ridiculous. Now with fewer cops, more reports, public safety is out the door in New York City if this bill passes. So I on all accept 538A, 586A, 781A, 944A, 948A, 1011A, and Reso 473. Thank you.
Thank you. Kaban.
Permission to explain my vote? Okay. I am really, really proud to vote aye on this entire package of bills coming through this committee. I think that the people most directly impacted by these bills, Black and brown New Yorkers who day after day have dealt with their constitutional rights being violated, have dealt with what we now know because of prior legislation like the Community Safety Act that are disproportionately impacted by this kind of policing. I dare to say that Black and brown low-income New Yorkers know exactly what police officers do, and that is why we're here today. I also know, having been a career public defender, cross-examining lots of police officers, knowing exactly every single piece of paper, DD-5, they have to fill out, and the amount of time it takes to do so, that anybody who dares to say that this is such a burden is just simply trying to avoid transparency and accountability. If we are going to truly make our city safe across every borough, for every single New Yorker, it starts with the people who have been less safe because of the way that we enforce the law and implement policing. So this is certainly the first step in the right direction. I'm really, really proud of the commitment of my colleagues and working together to make sure that the NYPD complies. So I very, very proudly vote aye.
De La Rosa.
A minute to explain my vote.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say that it is both offensive and a fallacy to insinuate that those of us that are supporting these bills don't understand how the NYPD polices our communities, given that I represent a community that has been at the crosshairs of the war on drugs, and I myself have been stopped and summoned by police officers. We know exactly what policing looks like in our communities, and what we are looking for here is transparency. So for anyone to insinuate that we do not understand what policing looks like unless we ride along, I invite you to come to my district and watch it for yourself. I vote aye on all.
Joseph.
Aye on all.
Mealy. Stevens.
Permission to explain my vote?
Everyone know that I came to the council to represent young people because their voice doesn't feel heard. And today I'm excited to vote aye on all because the reality is the young people who come from the community that I live in, the community that I represent, and the community I've dedicated my life to for over 20 years does not feel safe. And it is also very reprehensible when I hear that we don't understand policing. When I was actually a police cadet and worked in a police department for the entirety of my college career. So I do believe that this is what we need and moving in the right direction so we could have the data to support what we already know, which is that we have disparities and not equality when people are feeling safe throughout the city. So again, I vote aye on all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ariola.
Permission to explain my vote? Some of the bills up for vote today leave me deeply concerned about the future of safety in our city. In speaking with several current and former law enforcement officials about the effects of Intro 586 and what it will have on the people of New York, I have found the responses to be near unanimous. These bills will negatively alter public safety in this city. Just recently, speaking about Intro 586, Queens DA Melinda Katz stated, devoting the time this bill would require for voluminous record-making will serve only to divert limited resources from law enforcement's mandate to protect and serve the public. Bronx DA Darcel Clark echoed this sentiment, saying in her own statement that Intro 586 will lead to longer response times to crimes and fewer positive interactions between police and the public. These are not opinionated talking heads. They are Democratic district attorneys with years of real-world experience in law enforcement. And they both agree that these bills will bog down our officers with additional paperwork and negatively impact the community policing component of the NYPD. Therefore, I'm voting yes on 585 and 638 and no on all the rest.
Thank you. One moment. Botcher.
No on 586, aye on all the rest, and I want to congratulate all my colleagues on today's legislation.
Thank you. Following results, proposed introductions 585A and 638A are adopted by the committee with 10 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions. Proposed introductions 538A, 781A, 944A, 948A, 1011A, and Reso 473 are adopted by the committee with 8 in the affirmative, 2 in the 0, 8 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative, and no abstentions. And finally, proposed introduction 586A is adopted by the committee with 7 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative, and no abstentions.
Thank you. And with that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.